Welcome to Black Dads Unplugged. This is a platform to amplify the voices of black fathers and to promote a positive parenting narrative to include black fathers in the parenting discourse. And today I have Sfiso Atomza Buthelezi,
Yo.
good friend of mine. You know, we met we met a couple of years back in Braamfontein, and it was just a different season in our lives compared to the season that is happening right now with our kids in the background.
Yes, it's true.
And it's crazy, man. I remember like the first time you told me that yourself and Uzans are expecting Ukwezi.
Yeah.
You know, it was a surreal experience for me because I wasn't there. Like, you know, I wasn't thinking about being a father.
Listen to Zenze.
Yeah. And how you told me, and now that she's here, I actually have a great testimony about Ukwezi. She told me something so beautiful and so inspiring. Like, you know, I remember the last time Simlanda, you were coming back. Well, we were going to fetch her from a creche, or preschool or preparatory, whatever you call it.
Yes.
You know, and I asked her, how was your day? And then she said to me that my day was amazing. And that thing stuck with me so much, dude. Like, you know, I think I've told you this so many times.
Yes.
It was so profound. Like, just to hear like someone say that they have had an amazing day, because I feel like we're going through like a time where everyone is talking about, yo, I can't wait until it's Friday, you know, and all these type of things. And here is this young person with a beautiful soul telling me that they had an amazing day. And yeah, like that's how I wanted to start this series. So I'm going to interview a couple of dads. I wanted to start with you. And the reason I wanted to start with you, Sfiso, is because, like, you know, I think, you know, in the time when we met, you told me that you're a social commentator.
Yeah, well, of course.
You know, and, like, you know, I feel like, you know, this conversation is going to be approached with sensitivity, with care, with love, you know, with grace and an appreciation of just comprehensively looking at what it means to be a black father.
Yes.
And I don't know, do you want to say something, introduce yourself
Well,
to the people?
Samunan, it's good to be here. I'm quite grateful. Actually, I'm at my own place, so I don't know why I'm saying it's good to be here. It's good to be
It's good to be doing this.
It's good to be doing this, you know, and so I can't wait to have this conversation about fatherhood. I think it's one of the conversations that are quite necessary, because I think, you know, growing up in the manner that I grew up in the place where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of access to finding out what dads think. You know, what you know, besides the individual, you know, like, what does it mean to be a dad?
Yes.
You know, it's like, I mean, I'll tell you about the earliest memories I have of, you know, outside of my own dad, you know, but like about dads generally, like they're very quiet people.
Sure.
You know,
who said this before?
Yeah, no, who sometimes resign themselves to just being in the bonnet of the car, you know.
Sure.
It's like that's what I remember. You know, but when he's captain, he's captain in those bags, you know,
Sure.
you know, it's like, but like very quiet background characters. You know, and so I've always been interested in that. You know, the one dad I remember from my community was like Babaga Vibe, you know, Babunkabu, who was absolutely amazing. You know, but there was a little problem, you know, I think with him. I think with when people would talk about it, like, is that he smoked marijuana, you see?
Yes.
But like according to my standards,
you
know, I think he was like the dad. You know, like in the space.
Yes.
You know, it's like a guy you could count on. You know, it's like if there was something was happening in the community, you know, like you knew that guy would be able to sort of find a solution, whether it was a crime problem, was a business problem, maybe one business like need cope. And so like I've always been fascinated by that dynamic about like what it means to be a good dad.
Yes, sure.
You know, what does it mean to be a good parent? But also, you know, another fascination of mine is also like what it means to be a good child. You know, just generally a good human being.
Yes.
You know, because I think sometimes, especially as parents, you know, we sometimes disregard the fact that there is appropriate behavior, and we seem to disregard that fact.
Sure.
when it's our children, you know. And so I'm like, okay, look, how is a child supposed to behave, you know, in relation to everyone else who's around them, the parents, their peers,
Yes.
you know, their mother, their father,
Yeah.
you know, visitors who come to the house,
Sure.
you know. And so those are all the things that sort of, that interest me, you know.
Yeah.
So we'll have a bit of those chats. I'm looking forward to it.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. Ngikumbuzwa njengoba you're mentioning ubaba kabanibani, ngikhumbula ubaba kaManqoba. So me and I used to love riding bicycles. I still do. And ubaba kaManqoba, like there was a time, like, you know, I was riding my bicycle and then vele, like, you know, I got into the road and then bekhona imoto kababakhe. And then ubabakhe wakhipha, like, you know, iswazi, like, you know, like a tree branch.
Yes.
And one shire, you know. And, like, you know, those are one of the experiences, like, you know, in a collection I have of, like, you know, different fathers,
Yes,
like, you know,
yes.
within communities. But, you know, the more I grow older, you know, I have these questions that are in me. And I think for me, I've had this fear to say that as I've become a father, I'm fearful because I'm like, you know, I don't have a proxy of what fatherhood is, you know.
As well, there's no one who gets born with a manual.
Yeah,
You know, no child gets born with a manual that says, "Oh, treat me like this. You know, this is what I like. This is what I prefer. This is how I'm going to respond positively. You know, this is how I'm going to respond negatively." And so there has to be anxiety. And anyone who claims that they know anything is lying. They're a charlatan. You know, it's like skipping. You know, because all children are different. You know, circumstances are different. You know, like the mixing of different children in different circumstances, like, it can give us a rough guide, I guess, you know, like from a psychologist's point of view or from a sociologist's point of view about, like, what are the, you know, like, what are the conditions that need to be there in order to raise well-adjusted children.
Yes.
You know, it's a guide, you know, but it's not oh no, it's set in stone, there's nothing like that, you know, it's like a give and take. It's something that you also have to fumble through, you know, in order to really understand. And I think the idea of fumbling through it is what's really important, because then, you know, you give yourself space to learn. You know, you can only ever learn something you don't know. You know?
Yes.
And so, like, once you get to a position where you say, "Yeah, I know," it's like you're sort of cutting yourself off from knowing. You know, and I think that's the value of parenting, because ideally all of us don't know. You know, and so there's so much potential and space for us to grow, you know, and learn every day, you know.
No, that's brilliant. And speaking about learning, so the reason I have this platform is because I have these questions myself, and I'm struggling with the answers of these questions. So just to locate us, you know, just to locate us in the conversation, like, you know, as like for broad context, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. And like, you know, the first one I want to ask, and I think for me this has been a branding question for me, and I'm struggling to answer it myself, is like, what is a father? Like, you know, in how you see it, like, you know, how would you define what is a father? And I think this is, like, you know, a fundamental question in having such a conversation that a lot of us do not interrogate enough. So what is a father, man?
Listen, I think at its base, it's a biological. I think I need to be a father now because I think my child wants her. Grace, is that you? I think it's the small one. Anyways, so I think at the very basic, you know, of it, a father is a biological sort of happenstance. It's like, you know, in the old world, you have a male and a female who, like, come together and, you know, to procreate, if, you know, they deem it so. Sometimes they want to do it and it's like an active decision. Sometimes it's a mistake, right? And the procreation ends up happening, right? And then the one aspect, which is usually the feminine aspect, would become the mother. And then the, you know, masculine aspects of the thing would become known as the father, right? So at the very base of it, a father is the masculine principle in the parenting relationship, right? And now, like, what is masculine, what is feminine? I have no idea, right? But what I do know is that life sort of depends on this balance that needs to be struck, you know, the feminine and masculine one seems to be one of those balances that can't be run away from. And having said that, I think that the father not being there messes with the balance of things.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to sort of keep it at saying maybe the father is the balancing aspect of what the mother is.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yes.
for us, you know, for a lot of people who maybe never grew up without their fathers close to them,
Yes.
I think it would be very hard to understand what a role of a father would be. But everyone understands somewhat the role of a mother. And I'm saying that the father is what balances what the mother does.
Okay.
You know, whether this is happening or not.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
You know,
I still have, like, I'm still negotiating what the answer to that is, but, like, you know, I can really identify with the balance aspect, because, like, you know, I was predominantly raised by my mother, and I feel like, you know, there's certain aspects or certain conversations that I wish I had.
yes.
You know, and particularly like in my teenage years,
Yes.
time. Like, it's okay, this is what's happening to me, this is what's happening to my body, and, like, you know, what do you think? Like, you know,
Yes.
and just to have that, you know, male voice in the background. But, you know, this whole podcast is really about, like, you know, framing the conversation in a very positive, you know, in a positive light. And I want to understand, like, from you, like, you know, I know you're a father of daughters.
I am.
And, like, you know,
Jeez, I am.
what are some of the joys that fatherhood has brought to you?
Ha! You see, because you're making me think about the joys of motherhood.
Which is a brilliant book. Which is a brilliant book.
Well, yes, it is. Yeah. Puchi, I mentioned I actually got introduced to the book by Azola when Zez was pregnant.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
and only to find out at the end of the book there is no joy to motherhood. It appears, but the joys of fatherhood. You know, it was very stressful for me. I think I would say it like that, but I think it's stressful for everyone before you go through the thing. You know, it's because you have so many expectations about who you think you should be.
Yeah.
You know, but I did learn something that made things easier for me, which was something along the lines of, you know, to be a good father, it's something along like work on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
You know, and then, you know, you'd have something to offer the little ones.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's been a nice little learning on my side. I think that I've grown as well. And I've also aged. I've grown and I've aged since I've become a father. Because I think it's just part of the process. I've never looked at myself like this. Like, ngubaba womuntu. You know, it's like not too long ago, like I was looking up to people, but now there's literally people looking up to me, like, Baba, you know, and expect you to be like some sort of superhero.
Yes.
Because to them that's what you are, you know. It's like I remember that poem about how my dad began as a hero, you know, like my father began as a god. You know, and like the guy goes on about like how his father was this, you know, this amazing, strong, you know, vibrant thing. And then when he got to his old age he realized that, you know, it's like he's becoming weak. And but there was a value to take from that, you know. So I'm going through the motions, man, of like sometimes being strong, sometimes not thinking that you're strong enough. You know, that my child the other day, like, you know, asked me like, oh Baba, you like, you know, you don't have those big muscles. Like I'm like, well, yes, it's because I don't put in the time in, you know, in the gym to get those big muscles, you know, and like because it's about, you know, everything's about practice. You know, it's like you need to practice your muscles to become big. You know, so that's what I had to tell her. So you have to deal with those things, and then you have to ask yourself, do I really want to go to the gym and like be buff like that? You know, because like this is what perhaps she's seeing, and she thinks, oh no, this is what dads are going to be like. You know, but she's also complimented me on like when she sees like, oh no, like I can see, hey, well, you're getting strong. Like, there's no bicep showing. So it's like rediscovery of like who you think you are, because there's also dads as well, right, where you think you know who you are. Like someone like myself is very sure of who they think they are, right? But then when you have children, there's also, you know, something that you start to learn, you know, where you, I don't know, I mean, it's like having a partner as well. Like, you want to impress your partner to some degree. But when you have children, I don't know how to phrase this. You know? But like, it's almost like you want to be better, man.
Yeah.
You know, because like, you know,
and that is bringing you joy. It's like you like in the persuasions of wanting to become better.
Yeah, man. You know, because like it's not, what I'm looking for is not being good or being perfect. You know, it's like better is always better. Yeah, because like whether it doesn't matter how good something is, like better is always good.
Yes, sure.
You know, and so like I'm finding a sort of joy in realizing that. You know, it's like, and not thinking about perfection. You know, like the way my children look at me, it's like I've never done a wrong in my life. You know, like the way they look to me for things, like I know everything in life. You see? And so I'm starting to understand who I am to other people, you know, even if it is just my kids, you know, but like I'm like the superhero potential. You see? And so that's been nice. That's been a lovely joy, because sometimes you don't want to believe who you are to other people, because you know, someone like myself, I'll think that people are got too much propaganda in their heads. They can't understand when they see someone like myself, right? But my children are pure, you know, like they knew, you know, they just came here, and so I appreciate their, like what they think of me, you know, and it's been nice to see myself through their eyes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
I love it. You know, one of the things that I took out from what you've just said is that, like, you have to work on yourself first. You know, as you know, probably because I've shared some of this, I've been listening to a lot of Dr. Kunjufu. In the
Kawanzi.
in the late 80s, like in America, and he talks about promoting positive self-images in black children.
Yes.
You know, and like he has 5 principles of creating a high-performing household.
Yes.
You know, and the 5th principle, which I love the most, is that as parents we need to understand that we are the primary educators of our children.
Yes.
And like for me, from what you've said, that you need to work on self before you can experience these joys, you know, is very important when I link it to him to say that, and this is what my own experience is, like, you know, I'm working on myself, like, you know, because I understand that, you know, I'm the primary educator of my children. But we've talked a little bit about joys. We'll get into the challenges, but not too early. But like for me, I'd want to understand, like, what are some of, like, you know, like the things you've gone through, like, you know, your upbringing and your cultural background. How do you feel that has influenced the way you parent and the way you're a father?
How I grew up.
Yes.
Well, it's valuable to, I think, say that I was raised with like Christian values. You know.
Yeah.
Of I don't know. I think you would say things like altruism, sacrifice for the fellow man, love thy neighbor.
Sure.
You know. I thought those things were ideal principles, you know, because I never even saw them as they were preached, you know, amongst the people who were even trying to teach me about it, you see. And so I had a very questioning mind as a result of not being able to reconcile what these people are saying, and who are not necessarily only my family, but the people in the larger community. And what they were saying versus what I was interpreting as their actions. And so I realized that life is quite selfish, you know, because I experienced my parents' divorce as well. And I understood, but not selfish in a bad way. You know, I understood that sometimes you need to make decisions because you need to make a decision. Like, even if that decision means you want to leave your family. And so I understood that from when I was very young. You know, I thought my parents were silly for like breaking up. You know, when they could have sort of worked things out and not be overwhelmed by their irreconcilable differences. Like that. And so I grew up under, you know, those ideal Christian sort of norms. But then also I grew up in a divorced household, you see, which these two things they don't balance because supposedly God hates divorce. These people are teaching me about God, but they are divorcing. See, and so I still had to find my own understanding of what these people are actually trying to teach you. What are they saying in this? What they are saying with their mouths, but also how they are acting towards us, and how they are acting towards themselves. As the people who are married and. So we go to church. There's like a lot of like single mothers at church. The men that are there, they I don't know, they are quite okay men. They're not, I would say, not impressive men, if I want to say it like that. But they're okay. They feel like they're towing the line. But like they were very quiet. Absolutely quiet. And I didn't want to be those men. And so when I also there were not many answers. For someone like myself who had a lot of questions.
Yes.
I didn't get many answers. Or if I did get answers and explanations, there were explanations and answers that were designed to shut me up, and not to necessarily increase my curiosity. And so I realized at that point that that's not the type of older man I want to be, let alone a father. So I wanted to be a very open father. I wanted to be a father that's able to have conversations with their kids and their interests, even when I don't understand. Like maybe this will spur me to go and find out more information and make me like the super dad or whatever it is. And so that sort of influenced like who I became or who I am with my children. I'm like this loud father who's often it's very expressive about how I feel. I'm very like strong about my opinions. And like I will say when I think something is ridiculous, and my daughter has now learned the same lesson, because like some things are and they need to be called out for that, and so but like I think also the last 6-7 years of like having my child, my firstborn, has made me a militant parent. So I'm trying to raise my kids, guys. Like I'm not trying to allow the internet or your opinions to help me raise my children. I'm trying to raise my kids according to how I think kids should be raised, based on the ways of my people and some advice I'll find here and there. I'll talk to Azol, I'll talk to some of my people. But like, man, there's some bad advice on the internet about parenting from people who've never even had kids, from people who they say they were not parented very well themselves, and we can tell these things because of how people act, and it's important that I say this, because all these things are influencing who I am, like who I become, how I teach my kids, why I teach my kids, so it's
all right. So you talked about like the things that you saw, like fathers being quiet, and that's something that you didn't want to become. So I'm not getting a sense of, is there in your upbringing any positive black role model who was a father that you saw that, as in, man, this is someone I can learn from? And if so, what was that?
Of course, I had a guy who was actually his daughters and I used to go to the same school, and brilliant guy, Jacob Ndaba. He was a boxer.
Yes.
Brilliant guy from Mtimbis. Moved to Etakane and then moved to Erai Park. Actually,
Sure.
He had a civil engineering lab, called Tolopile Civils.
Okay.
And that's where I had one of my first jobs as well. I've worked a lot in my life. I did a stint there as well. In matric until my second year. I thought he was an absolutely brilliant man. And don't take me wrong. I did have a lot of brilliant people around me. The dads at church were, like I'm saying, they were there. And by me saying not impressive, I'm judging them now as I've become a man over 30 myself. But at the time, there were men who were there. They were better than my father, who was not there. And so They were, I think, great examples about like just being there, quiet as they were, or you know, unimpressive as they were. They were there. You know? And so I'm not sort of disregarding the positivity of being there. I think being there is a good start.
Yes, of course. Of course. You know, when you talk about being there, it's like this thing that's going on in the internet about being a present dad.
Yeah,
like for me, it's just like, yo, but
no,
don't give me an award for doing the bare minimum.
No, that's
like,
the start.
Come on, like, you know.
That's the start. Let me give you a medal for being at the start.
Yeah.
No. Don't give a medal for being at the start.
No, you don't get a medal. I love that. You don't get a medal for being at the start. But let's stop talking about being present dads. You're at the start.
I'm a present dad as opposed to what?
Yeah.
What do you want to be?
Yeah.
And not present dad, like, must give you a cookie. Here's a beer, bro, you're present. Like, that's your job, man. Like, you're present in creating this child. Like, where do you think you're going to go?
Yeah.
You know? Because, like, you can't even run away from the child because the child is 50% you.
Yeah.
You're telling me you're running away from the child?
No, but we digress. Let me bring us back. You were talking about working at Olepile.
Yes.
Lobabalo, Jacob.
Yes.
Positive role model.
What's right park close to your house?
Yes.
Yeah. So being Spanada, you know, like, and I really appreciated him, you know, like for what he did to me, did for me, did to me in understanding, like the role that a father can have with his children. But I also learned who not to be with my children. Yeah. You know, because I saw him and like who he was with his kids. And there were some things that I learned as well. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to be like that. Yeah. You know? And like I'm saying all these things because I think I watch people's character. Yeah. You know, in the same way that I watch my own as well. And there's some things I learn and you want to emulate him, and there's some things that I don't want to emulate. Yeah, sure. And he also had girl children, like daughters. And at some points, you know, their relationship did become difficult. But I'm so grateful to have witnessed their relationship. Yeah. Because there's things that I now want to look out for in my raising my own daughters. Yeah. And I think that's absolutely positive. And in that front, because negativity is not always like a bad thing. You know? Like you can always learn stuff from the things that are not overtly positive. You know, it's like it's framing, my friend. You understand this? You know, like how do we frame the things? Yeah. And so, like, we were calling about dead, man. We were calling about dead. Yeah. But yeah, like you know, the main thing that I will say, you know, it's like not very impressive in how I would imagine the dad would be. You know, like you know, who's supposed to be the superhero type thing. But like as a dad myself now, you know, it's just like I realized that those guys were there. Yeah, no, that's good. And you know, a lot of us didn't have dads that were there. I know. See, and so I think that in itself is pretty great. I mean, there's another dad, for instance, I'll tell you about this guy who was always fixing his car. You know, but the car didn't seem like it was getting better. You know. And as I grew older, I understood that maybe he just wanted to be outside of the house. Yeah. He just wanted to be not inside the house. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And so he had to keep himself busy somehow. Yeah. And it's a trait that I've seen, you know, of men just being outside of the house, outside of the home, for peace of mind, you know, most say. And yeah, that's another conversation that needs to happen, you know, but like, you know, gradually though. What is it that makes men want to get out of the home? Yeah.
No, I think that's an important conversation to have, but I think also that is a great segue to something I wanted to ask you around, like, you know, khona la mashola weswabukelayo manje paper geld, you know, and all these type of things. And I think that's why I asked you the question in the beginning, that what is the role of the father? Because I feel that the role of the father in modern society has been reduced to being a provider. Say, I want to be a provider. No, usually I think it's just like, you know, provision of money, you know, provision of financial resources.
What other things can be provided, my friend? Peace.
That's what.
Serenity.
Yeah, that's what maybe I want.
A warm home.
About. Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
A meal.
Yeah.
Comfort. Yeah. You know, those are all things that men can provide as well. You know, it's like they don't have to be resigned to the role of slave, working only to supply what money.
Yes, sure.
You know, I mean, I work as an artist. I am one of the fortunate ones who've actually made something off of my art, and also made a little bit of money. But I don't think that I would have made. I do think that I would have made a lot more money in corporate. You know, it's just a fair thing to note. There's no self-pity or anything linked to it. I understand my value as a human being, and so I don't get caught up in my inability to provide for my child, like what the world can consider the best. You know, I'm doing my best to provide my child for what I think is sufficient at the time. You know, but men can provide so much more than just money, as it's said. You know, amongst my people, like Black Dads Buthelezi, you know, women take care of the fields, right? So they take care of, you know, growing the crops and making sure that, like, you know, those crops are, you know, ready and cookable when people need to eat. And the men will go out and take care of the animals, the wild animals, not the wild animals, but like the animals that's it again. You know, because I think there's something there about wrestling with something that's got its own will. And I want to look at our roles as men and women based on that. You know, because like if I took out provision, like where am I getting this from? Am I getting it from a Judeo-Christian view about the man is a provider? You know, but a provider of what necessarily? You see, you know, because amongst my people, let's talk about Lavande. You know, like there's a Indula. You know, we've got in Siminyana la. You know, we've got the kraal where the animals stay. Right? It's like, what does the man provide in that setting? You know, and I understand that he'll provide protection. Right? He'll provide perhaps sustenance for the future, milk, you know, some potential meat if we need to slaughter or whatever happens. And umama uzosala, you know, ensimini and, you know, harvest the crops and make sure that they're growing. And so both of us are providers in that sense. You know, there's not one provider. Why must it be one provider? You know, both of us are providing. Even if we keep it at into yokudla, both of us are involved in that process. And so where did this come from about, you know, indoda you really providing? You know, it's because of certain other philosophies that came to us, you know, that needed the strength of men, you know, to go deep underground or to go work. You know, but these are the requirements of capitalism. You know, so they guilt trip you, I think. Guilt trip our societies into like leaving your family at home and going to work in the city so that you can send money home. You know, but like, what about your presence? You know, like, why is your presence not important? Why can't you provide for your presence? You know, like, oh no, but your presence is less important than your time. You know, and I think there's something fundamentally wrong there. You know, and I think that's something that I personally want to sort of not participate in. You know, like I want my children to know me and not my things. And so I'm actively working that, and like I'm grateful for my vocation, my work that allows me to like live this life where I'm like there for my children. You know, and I'm still able to provide something financial for them as well. You know, but like my being there for them, and they can say Baba, and like I can say yes, what's up? You know, when someone asks you Babako, you know, they don't say I'm not Baba. You know, I heard once a response like that.
No, brilliant, man. So, like, speaking about Abu Baba, like, you know, I think for me, like, part of creating this channel is just to say I'm trying to create a library or a repository where Black fathers can be heard and to inspire people and to also educate in as much as we can. So, do you do you think or do you believe there are actual resources in which us as black fathers we can, utilize? Or are there certain communities that exist for us to, leverage off, to help us in our fatherhood journey? Do you know of any, do you think those are communities that are necessary, like something like this, channel to ensure that we have those platforms?
Well, personally, I like to talk about parenting.
Yeah.
I like to talk about parenting personally, like I'll talk about parenting also on my social media.
Yeah.
But I've noticed something that people are not keen on talking about parenting.
Yeah.
I think it's based on that initial thing that we said, which is there is no manual, no one wants to always appear like they have it right. Because like, and they can decide to be their own human being and like poor, if I can put it like that. So I don't think people want to speak too loudly about that, and so I've tended to find that, reading about a thing or learning about a thing helps me to finally not be overwhelmed when I encounter the thing. See?
Yeah.
And so it's like by Wizard, a good way to put it is like tactical precedence. It's like if something happens right now,
Sure.
and we've never read about it, we've never seen it, we've never listen.
Yeah.
We don't know how to sort of navigate this thing, right? It's going to be much worse for the person who has never come across this idea or this thing that's now happening versus someone who has. So that's what reading does for me.
Yes.
Like I'm able to prepare myself mentally for a thing before it happens. So like whether this thing is parenting or it's like conspiracy theory things about like they're putting fake clouds in the sky, it's like go and read up about it and then you can make up your mind, right? It helps with like precedence, like do you know what this thing is? And so I think that's been the best thing for me, like reading about this stuff.
Sure.
And like you can you can find the really good content as well, but it might not be in the places where you expect, like the Christian writers are really amazing when it comes to parenting material, you might not agree with everything else that they say because you think it's nonsense, but I think you should check them out, what Dr. James Dobbs saying, like old school cats, there's another old cat, Zig Ziglar, maybe you might have seen him in quotes or whatever, he's written some pretty amazing things. One of the best things he's had is raising positive kids in a negative world. I remember once I had a conversation about that. And so for me, it's like old school knowledge, but also coming across things from my own family, right, where I get to learn about where I come from, the people that made me my dad, like the 50% that contributed to me, like how's he like, like can I see him in me, and like how can he help me about the things that I'm seeing up that relate to him in me.
Yes, sure.
I don't know if I'm
No, I know exactly.
And so that's the thing, like the ability to just have a generational conversation, whether that generational conversation is physical or it's in a book or it's in a video, it's like that conversation needs to happen.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think I wanted to ask you about some strategies or practices, around fatherhood, but I think you've mentioned some of them. But I think what is important right now, because but then you look at I'm struggling right now to find content which is relevant to young black children because my child is not speaking at the moment. But I can't find content where Kulumi Zulu, Xhosa, Sotho, or whatever, vernacular language. So what are some of the things you think could help us, or maybe that you are using in your fatherhood journey to instill a strong sense of pride and identity of being African?
You know what? Surprisingly, man, I think maybe I'm the wrong person for this. But I don't...
Yeah.
I'm not too focused on that.
Yes,
I'm focused on my child just becoming like a great human being.
Yes.
Who understands that they come from me and their mother and me come from other people, and then we spread the thing like that.
Sure.
But I was good say, hey, you're African, I don't even know what African is, bro.
Yes,
You know, it's like, I know my family, I know myself.
Sure.
When I from the beginning, you know, because I didn't want to struggle as kid, because I wasn't going to take her to preschool.
Yes.
I made up my mind about that a long time ago. See, so and as a result, right now she's like in grade 2. She's reading at like grade 7 level now.
Sure.
You know, absolutely brilliant. But lami isiZulu ngifunde eBhayibhelini, ngifunda eBhayibhelini isiZulu. And I'm taking the same approach with my daughter, you know. It's like she's learning isiZulu like in a curriculum, you know. But you know, I took the decision, and you know, like the mother supported me as well. Because what matters for me most is comprehension, you know. I want my child to be able to understand the world that's in, and a big part of how I've navigated the world has been in English. And so I'd be doing my child a disservice if I had to sort of introduce her to something I don't know much as well, which is my own language.
Sure.
Of course, ngiyakwazi ukukhuluma isiZulu, ngiyakwazi ukusibhala, ngiyakwazi nokucabanga nangaso. But inkinga yami is that I wanted a child who's able to engage with me and all the material that I've collected over the years, you know, and be able to engage with it and not lose herself. And not lose or feel like, no, she's at a disadvantage.
Sure.
And so that was my philosophy, you know. I do get sad now though sometimes when, you know, like I'll say a word in isiZulu or whatever, and like she doesn't know it yet. And so that's just like, oh no, but it's everything is a trade-off, guys, trust me. Especially for someone like myself who doesn't know what they're doing, you know, but you know, at least I'm willing to sort of talk about it freely and not feel any sort of self-pity or feel like I'm doing something that's wrong. Because in life you need to take a decision, you know, and especially like if you're going to be a parent, you know, you need to understand like what the implications of the decision that you're taking. So I understand as well the implications of not focusing on the indigenous languages that we come from. But I think that the most important thing is the ability to communicate. You know, and we're doing that very well. It doesn't matter the language in which it is being done. If my child was born under different circumstances and she had the inability to have speech, we would find another way to communicate that would not involve an indigenous language. And so that's where I'm at, you know, this. Don't come here with propaganda.
I hear you, Sfiso. Thank you for that. Like, very interesting take, because, like, I think the channel which is more important than anything else is, like, you know, the actual communication.
The communication, okay.
But like, I think we just want to wrap it up. But so this channel is like really focused on breaking stereotypes. You know, because like statistically, I know even like 31% of biological fathers are living with their children. About 50% of colored people are living with their children.
Man.
And then 80%, I think, white men biological are living with their children. And if I'm not mistaken, 86% people are living biological fathers living with their children. So with those statistics in mind, like for me, the most important thing was because in my circle, I know so many involved fathers, you know, who are parents who are involved, but who provide parental support, like, you know, who are just there fully. And so what are some of the stereotypes, you know, if you had a platform you would like to debunk about Black fatherhood as a closing question for our session?
I think the one stereotype, you know, that I'd like to sort of do away with is to think that like a black dad looks like something. It's like you know, there is no type of a black dad. You know, it's like, are you able to have children? Did you engage in sexual activity and procreate a child? And so then you're a father. You know, you don't have to now change yourself in order to fit that mold. But I do think that it needs to be a considered role. You know, it's like you need to think about this. You know, and hopefully think about it before the event. You know, it's like not told this old Camille. And then we say and then it's just like, oh no, so this has happened now. Like you need to, you know, like we need to be raising black boys, you know, who know that if you're going to have engage in sexual activity with the woman, the potential is that they will be pregnant, and there are repercussions to that, you know, and like the repercussion is that you need to take care of your 50%, bro. Like I think that's essentially it, you know. It's like imagine not being there. It's like now, like a single parent will take 50% yakho, because I mean she won't have an understanding about like uthi umuntu unjani, but as a person uyazazi wena ukuthi umuntu utala ukuthi lo ngathi uyatefa ngathi ufuze mina unokutefa nyana, you know, and so it's like, but you can see that because you know it, you know, but another person must deal with that, and then they become frustrated because they've never seen anything like this. Maybe whatever it is, you know, and they've never seen umuntu otefayo, you know, but if you're not there to sort of balance that shit out, then umntana loses out on the potential of being seen and understood. Bese kugcina sekasixaka la elifeni ngoba yena like atholanga isandla lakababakhe, you know, like now you're feeling like maybe babenze umsebenzi yini or like baba mina bangithandi, you know, and all those things are, you know, they're symptoms of people who are feeling unloved and uncatered for and not taken care of, you know. It doesn't have to be like that, you know. Like I've always thought about indaba yomsebenzi ukuthi baba mela ngenze umsebenzi, you know, it's like these kids just need a hug from their dad, you know. It's like that's it, you know. It's like they just need to be hugged by their dads, you know, and be told that, hey man, I like you, you know. Maybe
I think that's very important.
No, honestly, man,
I've never heard that
from your dad.
Yeah, like which is like, you know, has been really tough, you know.
Can I just tell you what happened when I told my dad what I'm tired? He said to me, "Hi, okay, Sfiso." So I think it was a great response that he could have given me, you know, because like it was so honest. He was overwhelmed.
Yes.
By the moment.
Sure.
And I think he also realized, oh snap, man, like I'm actually the one who was supposed to say this to this one. Before he feels the need to say it to me like this. And then I responded, hi, okay, Sfiso, like just wiping some heavy sweat, you know. And so I think we should take care of our people, you know, and the people that birth our people.
Sure.
Because sometimes we can resign ourselves to fatherlessness, especially in South Africa. It's like, fatherlessness, but well, at least, you know, in this day and age, it's like umama no baba. Technology is umuntu oaf. Okay, so it's like umuntu umama no baba. You know, and I think like we must not forget, we can't be having kids, you know, when we I said, hey, where's your father? Say, I don't have a father. No.
There's nothing like that.
No. Please, but this is a responsibility of everyone. The father plus the mother.
Fantastic. Sfiso, thank you so much. I appreciate you, man.
Sure. Appreciate you too.
And like, you know, this has just been such a brilliant conversation for me. And yeah, like this is our first episode of Black Dads Unplugged. We want to amplify the voices of black fathers and promote positive representation of black fathers.